I'm Cameron Violet.
And I'm David Van Dorn. We've both always been avid believers in the paranormal in terms of spirits and ghosts, but until conducting our investigations at Farrar Elementary, we've never really had any way of proving that spirits exist, no personal experiences or evidence to speak of. Our first visit there was in June 26th of 2011, this year, and while it didn't provide us with a lot of concrete evidence, it did give us an interesting idea of what to expect for our 3 return visits later on in the year.
Yeah, it was more of a it was like it was a whistling. My experience personally was on the second floor. It was the two of us. He was in the hall. I was in a room. I was doing EVP session. I was trying to pick something up. He was out roaming the halls, seeing if he could find anything. And I mean, it sounded just outside the hall, like right in the hall. Like I could have swore it was him, and he thought it was me.
I don't even know how to whistle though, so.
No, but I mean, and the rest of our team had heard it too, and we didn't even think anything of it. It was just the sound. It was so typical. There was 6 of us in the building. We just assumed it was one of us whistling, and until about time to leave, we realized that through discussion, I mean, we'd all heard this, and there was no explanation as to who it was coming from, because none of us were whistling.
It was nothing we thought of at all during the night. It was just, why would someone be whistling during our investigation? Until leaving, when we realized that nobody had at all whistled that night. It just kind of crept up on us that, you know, that wasn't any of us. We can't say it was paranormal. We can't just claim it was, but we definitely have no explanation for it, given how, out of the 6 of us, no one had confessed to whistling. It was just pretty unsettling.
Yeah, I mean, that's all we really picked up on our first visit. It was pretty calm night, not filled with too much. And we returned on August 9th of 2011. And on that particular visit, at one point, me and David, we went up to the 3rd floor, sat in the principal's office, and we were asking just a series of questions, doing an EVP session. And at one point, we got an answer. It wasn't voice. It was nothing visual. It was what sounded like a notebook dropping onto the tile floor at the end of the hall. And I mean, the principal's office sits right up, overlooking the entire hallway, just all the way down to the end to the other stairway. And it sounded just clear at the end. We went down and there was nothing there. We looked for what could have possibly fallen off of a desk, maybe something in the other room. We couldn't find anything. Thought it was cool. You know, I mean, obviously we hoped it was something, you know, paranormal, but at that point in time, we really couldn't prove it. So we kept it in the back of our minds.
It was an interesting thing. It kind of supported the idea of a possible intelligent haunting. It was just something that, you know, we didn't pry into too much.
No, not at all. And in fact, later that night, we had left the camera rolling up there on the 3rd floor because of this. It was we had camera, we had audio, we had it going from 12 to 12:30 probably where we left, and we went across the street to the cemetery. Our entire team, leaving absolutely no one in the building. About 20 minutes into the audio, when reviewing evidence, we found what sounded like a deep breath, like just an exhale, just right there, like right into the digital recorder. And I mean, immediately after, you heard us coming into the building. I mean, there's no one in there. You heard us entering. You know, you heard our muffled voices, you know, footsteps, because we went into the base for about 10 minutes, and you heard us come back up and get our equipment later on and shut it all off to review it. It was pretty cool.
It was actually quite scary the first time I heard it. It's just as clear as day. You know, when reviewing this evidence, it's nearly impossible to miss. Just loud and clear. It really kind of creepy to think about.
And being a school, we really didn't expect something like that to happen, so it kind of caught you off guard. Just going over it, give it the goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
That's really all that happened though on that visit itself.
Yeah, our 3rd trip, things got really intense in my opinion. It was October 30th, and while you didn't get the spirits to interact with you that night, I did, and I was actually quite disturbed by it. My younger sister had been upstairs with another member of our group, and she was, you know, trying to record EVPs and whatnot, when she comes downstairs exclaiming that she had gotten this spirit or whatever to respond to her 3 times back to back. She asked it a question. It gave us that same sound that we had heard during our second visit in response. She asked it to do it again. It did. And then one more time. I was skeptical to this. I wanted to see for myself, so I went with her to the 3rd floor, up into the principal's office, and we were up there for about 4 minutes. and for 3.5 minutes we had nothing. She couldn't get another noise out of it. I was beginning to think that maybe she was just trying to, get attention or something like that. But about 3.5 minutes into this, she mentions that it only seems to interact with the female members of our crew. Well, I get the idea that perhaps it's a young girl or a young boy. I ask the question, could you by any chance be a young boy? And without hesitation, in response, that same noise that it uses to respond to us, clear as day, right in front of us. To me, it seemed louder than it had ever been before. We recorded it clearly on our voice recorder. It startled me so much, I actually took off running. I was like, let's get out of here, because, to have actually heard it responding to us on our second trip was pretty creepy, but for it to actually respond to me, to interact with me, just something I'll never forget. It gives me chills just thinking about it. I didn't quite feel threatened, but
right.
not comfortable.
Just to give some information on it, we'd done investigations on the third floor, numerous times. In fact, that's where we spent most of our investigations. We've done every single room, we've done in the hallway, and we've done the principal's office. And the sounds only happened when we were in the principal's office. And you want to write it off to just the old building making noises, just creaks. But it's just what happens. It at one point stopped. On the 30th, it just stopped. It reached a point in the night where just nothing happened at all.
If it were the building creaking, it should have continued.
Right, and it would have happened no matter, despite what room we were in.
And it wouldn't have been so. I can't imagine it being so perfectly ironic that after we would ask it questions and to repeat itself, it would do it pretty much every time. Not every time, but whenever it would choose to respond to us, it was
absolutely. It's definitely what we would feel to be a sign of intelligent haunting.
It was, yeah. Nothing else could describe that. That was still quite a life-changing experience for me to actually have been communicating with something like that, for it to respond to me.
Oh, definitely. And then that was what really happened on that visit. We came back once more. It was November 13th of 2011. This time I was running a little bit late because of work and getting sleep. I had to get rested for the investigation. While the rest of the team had gotten there a little earlier than I had, about an hour or so.
Yes, it was me and 3 of our other members. We were downstairs just, getting ready for the night. Just decided to check out the gymnasium because we never really focused too much attention there. While down there we were hearing strange noises. I still don't know how to describe it. It kind of sounded like a weird machine type sound. I don't know how to describe it, but we were also definitely hearing muffled voices. So much to the extent that it caused us to leave this gymnasium twice to go investigate to see if the other 2 members of our group had arrived. In both cases, no one was there except for us. But we eventually decided to return to our base camp, and this is where things got really interesting. We were just sitting there, all in different locations of the room, but we had a cake pan filled with brownies and a knife wedged in between 2 brownies. Just in the middle of a brief discussion on what to do about the knife, suddenly, without any reason, I cannot think of any reason why it would have, it just jumped from this cake pan, moved about 1 or 2 feet, and just landed in the middle of the floor. It was really shocking, because up until this point, we had never actually seen anything with our own eyes. It was always noises and recording things like that. So that was really shocking, especially for it to be at base, where we had labeled as our safe haven. We've had, during our previous investigations, people have actually slept in that room, and it's just no one's ever reported anything paranormal about that.
Even on the tour, that was just base. That was it. No activity, no nothing. We would have never thought to ever, do an investigation. No reason for camera.
But the worst part about it was after that incident with the knife, I taunted the spirit. I challenged it, saying to stay away from my PSP, which was in a bag right next to the cake pan. And as if in response, in accepting my challenge, the garbage can, the lid to it is one of those dome lids where you push it in. It suddenly started to sway on its own. It just one quick little thrusting motion, and it just went back to center. It was crazy. It was again responding to something that I had said, and visually, we wish we'd had our cameras rolling, but we'd never had a real reason to. It was just supposed to be a safe place, and then that happened. It's something we'll need to look into during continuous investigations into the future.
Yeah. That about wraps up everything that we've done on all 4 investigations, all the big pieces of evidence.
That concludes our ghost story.